Laura here. I'm back to do part 1 of my March reading wrap-up. I was able to finish 9 things. I'm going to do my stats at the end of the month because I think it will be a little bit easier to do my stats at the end of the month. But I did want to say that if you notice my voice sounds a little bit different, I am battling a touch of laryngitis just because I talk too much in my day job. And then I come home and I film sometimes, so it just makes my voice go a little bit wonky. But I'm pleased to report that I have been able to finish 9 things, which I think is quite impressive because the first week and a half of the month, I was not feeling my best. I was battling a really, really bad sinus infection that sort of like knocked me off my game a little bit. But I'm on the mend. I'm feeling better. So let's get into the books that I read. The first book I'm going to chat about is such a disappointment. And I think it's just me. I think everyone else has loved and adored this book. I did not. So let's talk about In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Well, here's the photo. This book with such high expectations because Riley Marie loved it, Bookables loved it, so many people loved it. However, I really struggled with it. I rounded it up to 3 stars on Goodreads. Honestly, it was probably like a 2.5 star read for me. I hated all the characters, and I think that was sort of the point, to hate all the characters, but there was nothing about any of these characters that was like really likable, and I struggle with unlikable characters in general, but unlikable characters in the whole book. It was basically set at this boarding school. These young adults or young people, they were going back for their like 10-year reunion, and when they were in school, one of their friends had died. One of their other friends had been they believe was the murderer, but then as they start uncovering it, maybe it's not what they think. So all the characters I hated, did not care about it. It was a really, really fast-paced and quick read, but honestly, the writing wasn't that amazing for me anyway, and I did not like any of the characters, which is hard for me to become invested in a book if I hate all the characters. She has a romance coming out, which I may check out just to see if I like it a little bit more, but this was not it for me. 2.5 stars, really did not like it, unfortunately. But if you don't mind unlikable characters, you might like it. I just really struggled with it. Another book that I read early in the month when I was on the mend was Finley, Donovan Knocks Them Dead by Casamano. I will say I like this book a little bit more than my physical book, but not that much more. And I think it was just because the main character started to annoy me a little bit, but here's the cover. Books are fun. Like, it's an enjoyable read. You basically have this young murder mystery novelist who winds up getting mistaken for a hitman in the first book, and that's the first book. The second book is more of a continuation of that plot because someone is trying to kill her ex-husband, and she is basically been given this, like, there's 2 people competing to kill her husband, and she wants to figure out why, her ex-husband. I liked it. I found it was a cute read. It was engaging. It was fun. But I felt like she got herself into way too many situations that she did not need to get into. And that is just me as a reader. Sometimes I read these cozy mysteries and I was like, why did you get yourself in that situation? So it was a little bit unrealistic, but that's okay. They're meant to be unrealistic. It was fun. I think I like book 1 a little bit more. But book 2, the ending of book 2, I did not see it coming. So I'm really excited to see where book 3 goes. That will be an interesting plot point. But that really surprised me. Like, I did not expect that at all. So that was like the highlight. That's why I gave it 3 stars. But it was a fun read. It was engaging. It didn't wow me. I think I like book 1 more, but it was still enjoyable, and I'll definitely check out book 3 in the series, whenever it comes out, probably next year. Or picked up was Amberly and the Secret of the Fairy Warriors. It is middle grade March. This is a book I actually got from the author. She sent it to me, I think, in like December, so I finally got around to reading it. It is very, very short. It's like 130 pages. So I feel like this book would have benefited from just being a full-length novel and being a middle grade novel because I really love the world. The world was really, really interesting. But you basically follow this girl named Amberly, and she has some challenges. Her wing does not work the way everyone else's, so she's dealing with that, and she's basically has always wanted to fight, but her mom and her family don't think that that's an acceptable way because she is so injured and she is dealing with a lot of physical issues. So she sort of goes on an adventure to sort of figure out what happened to her dad, and that is the adventure that happened. It's a very, very cute story. I read it in like a day. It was fun. I liked it. I wish the story would have been fleshed out a little bit more. I know book 2 is coming out eventually. I will probably check it out. But it's cute. It was fun. It made me smile. I like the representation of, like, physicality in fairies not being the typical version of it, because that was interesting. I really did like it. I'm probably going to give this to one of my kids when I'm done at the end of the month. But overall, I liked it. I gave it 3.75 stars. And I'll probably check out more by this author in the future. What I read was definitely one that, like, I liked a lot more, and that is the companion book to Pride and Premeditation. I have an e-arc of this. I'm on a blog tour in early April. Be sure to check out that blog post whenever it goes live. My link to my blog should be in the description box. But this book I really loved, and here's a photo. Take on Sense and Sensibility. So in this book you have 3 sisters, but you follow 2 of the main characters. One of the sister wants to, like, overtake her dad's business, which he's like a private investigator, and you have the other sister who is very into science. When their dad is murdered, or he's found dead, the 2 girls are not convinced that it was natural causes, and they start to uncover what really happened to their dad's death. It was so much fun. I, like, read through this book so quickly. I remember I did the same exact thing with Pride and Premeditation. I have been loving my Regency reads recently, and I've been struggling to find a mystery element in a stories like that, because that's really what drives me in those stories, like mysteries as well. I love this book. I'm really excited for Murder. I think it's going to be a Mansfield Park retelling. I can't think of the title, but it's very, very cheeky, very, very fun, and I just love this book. I love how there was a very, very strong sister dynamic in this one. You could tell how much they cared about each other. There was also a very, very strong mystery. It was really hard to predict how her dad died, and I like that. It really kept me on my toes. 4 stars. Definitely in the first half of the month, one of my favorite reads. One of my top reads of the month so far, because I really enjoyed this, and it was nice to have a book stronger than all the other ones that I've read, because this one was perfect, and I hope you will check it out in April. This book that I read is another book that I'm on a blog tour for. Sadly, it got pushed right when I read it, but that's okay. That just means I read it early. But it's called Geordie and Joey Fall from the Sky, and this is another middle grade book that I read, and here is a photo. The book does have a surprising ending, so I'm not going to give away the ending. But what I will say is that you basically have these 2 twins, Joey and Geordie, and they were found in a crop circle when they were little. And they have these marks on their backs, and everyone doesn't really know. And one of the boys is convinced that he is an alien and that he came from the sky. And you sort of follow him and his twin brother and this young girl that they meet on an adventure to try to figure out where they came from. It is a very heartwarming story. I will say that. It definitely is a twisty-turny story, very action-adventure heavy. The ending I really liked, and I wasn't sure where the story was going to go, but I really enjoyed it. It had elements that reminded me of The Fosters, which is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and one of the Murphys, which is another book that I really do enjoy. If you know anything about that series, you probably know where the book goes, but really enjoy it. Very, very quick read, especially for reluctant readers, because I think it has a nice balance of contemporary issues, but also supernatural elements to it potentially. So it was actually a very, very fun read. I gave it like 3.75 stars. Really enjoyed it. And it was just it was a very, very heartwarming story at the end, and it's not what I was necessarily expecting. Is an Indian-inspired fantasy. This is actually the Owl-Crate edition. That's why the cover looks a little bit different. I really love this book. So you basically follow four siblings, a country in ruins, and one quest to save them all. So you follow 4 different characters, 4 different of these siblings, as they are trying to get back the magic power of their city. And it was a fun read. I love the elements of this story. I love how you got 4 very, very different main characters. One character you follow is like the leader, the queen of this society. The other character you follow is a younger sister that ran away from her responsibilities. You follow the twin brother of the regent, who is like dealing with a lot of issues. He doesn't want to get married, and he's very protective of his brother, his other brother, which is in jail for the murder of their mother. So it's a lot, but I was like equally invested in all of the characters' point of view. When the Regent's new patrol is killed and their magic is waning, they have to reinvestigate their father's belief of the Ivory Key, which can open up more stores of magic. It was a romp. It had a treasure hunt element to it. I really liked it. I like how the characters were sort of forced to work together as well, which I love when siblings are forced to work together. Really enjoyed it. I learned a lot in general about the Indian culture through this story, and I loved all the characters. If I had to choose a favorite, I would say my favorite was probably Caleb, who was falsely accused of assassinating the former matriarch and needs to clear his name. I think he was definitely my favorite. There was definitely some twists and turns at the end of the story that I did not see coming. Definitely a 4-star read, and I'm definitely going to check out book 2 when it comes out. It's only a duology, but I really like this book. Definitely high on my list of favorites for the month. I picked up was an audiobook, and that is The Madness of Ian Mckenzie by Laura Ashley. This is a book that was on my authors to tackle in 2022 list, so I'm really excited for that. And here's the cover. Peace loves books, favorite reads, and I can tell why. It has some elements I really like, but you basically follow Ian Mckenzie, who is autistic. He is on the spectrum, but back in those days, they didn't know what that was. So he was locked in an insane asylum for several years, and he's sort of a little bit ostracized from the whole family and the whole society as a whole. But when he crosses paths with this young lady, their paths wind up crossing, and they wind up having a relationship. It was very, very interesting. There was a lot of elements against Ian right from the start. He was convicted of a murder, and there was a lot of stuff working against him. I liked it. I liked how the mystery element was engaged. I liked how much they grew to love each other. I love how we also got a lot of Ian's family, because his family gets subsequent books as the series goes on, which I'm definitely going to check out. But I just loved being in Ian's head. It reminded me a lot of being in The Maid's Head by Nita Prose. Like, she also was on the spectrum, and their heads are so interesting to be in. Hard at points. Ian had a very, very hard life, but I just loved his relationship with the leading lady in this book as well. I cannot think of her name, but really enjoyed it. I actually just started book 2 in this series, Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage. This is also a Scottish romance book, and it's also a widow romance. I haven't read a lot of widow romances. I think I've read like one other one. But I really am liking it. And I haven't read a lot of Scottish either. But I really did enjoy this. Thanks, Peace Love Books, for the recommendation. And then the next book that I tackled, just look at, I think it was another audiobook, and that is Sea of Monsters, which is book 2 in the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief series. I am reading this along with the Prophecy Radio reread. I actually was really far behind because of Disney. So I just read this in like about a week, because it's not that long of an audiobook, but the episodes are like about an hour and a half long. So I did wind up liking this. I'm happy that I picked it up. I got to see Tyson again. Tyson is one of my favorite characters, and I actually just hope to stay more on track with book 3 and not be like 16 episodes behind. That is my goal for this week, is to actually just be on track for that. But I loved it. It's been a long time since I read this book. And I don't know if I ever listened to it. I think I definitely listened to book 3, because when I'm like, definitely listened to this before. But I do love the narrator and these books. And it's also part of I read a lot of middle grade books that wasn't really planned, it just sort of happened. This is definitely a fan favorite. I really do like this book, and I'm so happy that I'm continuing on my reread. And if you, like me, have not reread Percy Jackson in a while, make sure you check out Prophecy Radio. Karen and Kristen do a really, really good job. And then the last physical book that I finished in the first half of the month was The Prison Healer by Lynette Nomi. I really did love this book. Like, right from the start, I loved it. It basically follows this character named Ziva, and she is the prison healer. Her and her dad were convicted of being rebels and like working with the other side, and they were put in jail when they were very, very young. She was like 7 or 8, I think. But she does have a knack for healing, because her dad was a healer. So she basically spent this whole time as a prison healer, like protecting people, burning them, So one day, a young man comes into her prison and her healing place, and they just start developing a connection. There's also a guard that gets involved, and there's a lot of stuff happening in the story. The end of this book blew my mind. Like, blew my mind. So the whole premise of this book is she's basically been sent away from her family when she was very, very little. But they have consistently sent her letters like, don't worry, we're coming. But when the rebel queen is sent to her prison, they said, don't let her die, we are coming. And she decides the only way to do that, to protect her, is to basically act as her proxy in this elemental fight. It is a really, really quick read. There was also a little boy character in this story that Ziva has to protect throughout the whole story. It is great. The end blew my mind. I had to call my friend and be like, is that what I just read? So I definitely have to read book 2. I'm probably going to try to read it in March, in April. But I loved it. 5-star read. Definitely one of my favorite reads of the month by far. So I started off the month a little bit rough, really, really struggling. But now I'm really enjoying all the stuff that I'm reading. So webs and flows, my friends. But thank you guys for chatting with me today. I will talk to you for my next video. Stay safe. Be well. Bye, friends.